And we're back. Welcome to Action 9 at 8. My name is Disco Dancer Dave. Tonight, we have Disco Fever, but first, the nightly news. In a blockbuster Supreme Court decision, the Supreme Court ordered the admission of Alan Bach to the University of California Davis Medical School after it was decided that the existing racial quotas were illegal. Alan Bach, a 33-year-old engineer for NASA, wanting to redirect his life, had applied to various medical schools after serving in the Army and working at NASA. However, many universities turned him down due to his age. UC Davis, however, gave him very high scores on his admissions process regardless of his age. Despite his marks, there were only a few seats left due to his late application. An admissions dean suggested he apply a second time, and after this, consider legal action. After being rejected a second time, he complained to the university. Here is his case.
I'm not one for interviews, but I feel like I've been a disservice in the pursuit for greater education. I've served my country many times over. I served in Vietnam and earned an honorable discharge, and now I want to pursue my new interests in the medical field. Surely, I was a little upset when 12 universities denied me because of my age. However, when UC Davis denied me, despite my obvious qualifications, it was the last straw. I decided, after the second rejection, to bring them to court to stop the unfair treatment of white people in the application process. It's not fair that someone can make it into medical school, even if I have much greater qualifications than them, just because of the color of their skin, or where they come from meets a quota set by some head of the university. So I told them, see you in court.
Well, that certainly sounds dramatic, Bach. Let's examine the case and the litigants. While both lawyers took heat on the floor, Bach's lawyer, Reynold Colvin, kept it together and assisted Bach to a victory against the university, while the university's lawyer, Archibald Cox, couldn't withstand the pressure. Now, let us question the Chief Justice who helped decide the case.
Now, I'm not supposed to talk about specific cases, but I feel this one will be particularly influential in the future. Although the official decision resulted in racial quotas being banned, race is still allowed to be a factor in college decisions. Of course, this was no easy decision. 4 justices wanted race to have no effect at all and to ban all racial quotas, while 4 other justices found that allowing race to be a factor was indeed constitutional. Powell agreed that racial quotas were unconstitutional, and therefore Bach was ruled to be admitted. In the final decision that Powell drafted, however, he wrote that the race could be a factor in college admission. This resulted in the final decision being an 8-1 decision. However, many people are saying that this was a plurality decision, because there was not a majority of justices who were completely on board with the decision.
So Bach will be admitted to the university?
Yes.
Well, now that we know the ruling, let's see how this will most likely impact the future with our local oracle.
Yes, I see the future that affirmative action still stands in universities, even as far as 2017. Although, in 1996, the California state school system voted to strike down race as a factor in admissions processes. Many people found that the Powell decision was weak, but in the 2003 court case, Gruffer versus Bollinger, the Powell stance was confirmed by a majority opinion, which solidified the previous plurality rule. Later in 2013, the case Fisher versus University of Texas decided that racial quotas would be banned once and for all, and that courts had to review all affirmative action programs. However, it still upheld the principle that race was allowed to be a factor. In 2017, I predict that the case will still be relevant and will dictate paths to universities to that day. I think that in 2017, there will be quite a bit of resistance to affirmative action, with many people disliking it due to the fact that it hurts their college chances. However, it seems that the decision will remain for at least a few decades following 2017.
Now, let's poll future college students about what they think about the decision. So, random stranger, what's your opinion?
Well, I personally believe that this landmark case will affect future cases for years to come, and I feel that it will prevent future conflict and arguments regarding the fairness of college admissions. Therefore, I agree with the outcome of this case and with the decision as a whole.
And you? What's your opinion, sir?
Personally, I believe that the case is extremely important. Under the Equal Protection Clause, all persons must receive equal protection under the laws, and the laws must therefore correct past injustices to be equal. As many minority students are inherently disadvantaged due to segregationist zoning and systematic racism, we need this legislation in order to correct these unfair realities. I agree that racial quotas are too far, but I think that if other circumstances, such as first-generation college students, are factored, then race should be too.
And now for one last opinion. What do you think? Personally, I think the case is relatively solid, and while the ruling can be seen as quite open, I think this helps in allowing the case to be being applied to a number of future cases. Now, I can see why some people might be angry at potentially being at a disadvantage for something they can't control, but not everyone can win all the time, you know? I mean, I benefit from the case in helping my chances, so I kind of like it. Now that we've heard from our faithful locals, we'll wrap up with a concluding statement from our available judge about the potential future impacts of this case.
This case will likely provide equal opportunity in colleges in the coming years, while still maintaining diversity amongst the student body.
All right. Thanks for your time, Judge Powell. That concludes our nightly report. Disco out.